I've been eager to talk to you this week after the tragedy of Alexei Navalny's murder last week. And I just want to begin with your reflections on Alexei Navalny, what he has meant to Russia, and what his martyrdom will mean to Russia.
Well, the most important thing to say about Alexei Navalny, I think, is that he was a courageous person in a time when I worry that fear is rising in our politics, and where fear is so important to the collapse of democracy around the world. He was courageous. He was courageous enough to tell the Russian people that they were being ruled by crooks and thieves. He was courageous enough to return to Russia after he'd been poisoned, knowing that he would be imprisoned. He was courageous enough to tell the truth about oligarchy, which is something we could all use. I think his death not only deprives Russia of a hope for a different future, it's an example of how Putin has tried to crush the generation younger than him and the generations younger than that. It's a sign of how a kind of authoritarian gerontocracy is removing the future from Russia.
Is there something in the Russian people that somehow supports this kind of heroism? Because it's so difficult for me to think of a contemporary American counterpart. We have Martin Luther King Jr. Decades ago, but a contemporary American counterpart to Alexei Navalny is hard to imagine. And I think of Nadia Tolokonnikova and others who've spent years in Russian prisons and still are in this fight.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I can't help but think, of course, also of the numerous Ukrainian citizens, not just prisoners of war, but simply Ukrainian citizens who've been kidnapped and are held in Russian prisons, and the numerous Ukrainian intellectuals, writers, people of culture, people of all walks of life who are courageously fighting against Russia and risking their lives right now. Many other people have been killed by Putin, sadly, since Navalny was killed. I think that Russians, that there is a proud Russian liberal tradition of risking one's life for the truth. And I think the people who do it know that the truth is in a way the very last resort. It's the last thing that you have. And I think that is why you will see, along with Navalny, among the list of people who have been killed by Putin, so many journalists.
What are the stakes, as you see them tonight, in a presidential election between Donald Trump and Joe Biden on the issues we're talking about here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, Navalny, one of Navalny's most important things that he said was, don't be afraid. And that really is the fulcrum. If you're the Republican Party and you're afraid of Trump, you've already given up on democracy. If you're the Democrats and you're afraid instead of trying to win, then then your chances are lower in November. If you're Trump, what you've already said is that you want to lock up your opponents, just like Putin locks up his opponents. So we could go in that direction if we elect the wrong person. Things can go very quickly the wrong way. We could look much more like that country. We could look much more like a country where there's a widow and a daughter who are grieving. We could look much more like that country where a mother can't even get access to the body of her son. And it can happen very quickly. There are unfortunately politicians in our country who like that model. So I'd say that pretty much everything is at stake.